We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners, Burke, Britton Financial Partners. This is the Finances podcast. This is episode number 74. It's just me solo today. My co-host Ben has deserted me, but I'm lucky enough to have two guests with me, Rohan Braddy, CEO of Gateways Support Services, and Jandi Watts, Manager of Marketing and Communication. Welcome both of you to our little podcast.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having us.
Oh, no worries at all. Now, Jandi, I know you said before we weren't sure whether you were going to join us. Very happy. You and I had a conversation probably, how long ago was it? Maybe a couple of months ago?
Yeah, maybe 2 months.
Yeah, where I sort of offered a bit of context around the connection between Burke Britton Financial Partners and Gateways. Rohan, I wanted to have you talk a little bit about Gateways, but maybe beforehand I might do the highlight reel of the conversation that you and I had, Jandi, which went something along the lines of the fact that I had a connection with Gateways going back to when my third child, Alfie, needed some support services with speech therapy and OT. Alfie's now 13, and for the last 10 years, he's been supported through Gateways. A special shout out to Alfie's speech therapist, who I know no longer works with Gateways, but Olivia McClelland, who Alfie, through Gateways, had an amazing connection with and has kind of put his world into perspective over the course of the last decade. That led to maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think 2017, as a part of one of the philanthropic programs that we run here at Burke Britton, of us getting involved with Gateways via way of a contribution from our clients through what we call the Future Generation program. And that then led us to having a coffee and finally getting Rohan on the podcast to talk in a bit of detail about what Gateways do, some of the challenges that Gateways face, and what the future looks like and how people can get involved and supported. I know that's a very long intro, and I hope that does a decent job of summarising our coffee. Does it, Jandi?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
So, Rohan, let's give me your sort of summation. I know you've only been in the role sort of 8 months now, but your summation of what Gateways does, who they are, and who they support in the community.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Gateways has been a part of the Geelong community for over 40 years. It wasn't always called Gateways back then, but through a number of mergers and throwing its wares in with other organisations, it became Gateways about 25 years ago in name. We're supporting a range of people, predominantly people with disabilities, although we do have some other services, including aged services as well. But our main focus, children and adults with intellectual disability and with autism, other complex support needs, that's our specialty. And really, in essence, we support people to live great lives, to live the lives that they want to live with their needs as they perceive them, not imposed by us, but as they perceive their needs being met. And not always by Gateways, by the way, but we have really clever people, support coordinators, who find supports for people that they need out in the wider community as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned Olivia, who was obviously a speech therapist that worked with you. It was also some OT therapy. If I go back to our initial experience, and this probably goes to speak to a little bit of sort of the Disability Royal Commission and the NDIS and sort of what's happened in that space, because I must admit, before having kids, I gave this sort of zero thought of what services my children would need where they're challenged. And to be honest, I had no idea where to go. And it wasn't until we actually got involved with Gateways with Alfie and started to see the opportunities and the services that were presented. So I suppose what has been the evolution of disability support services 25 years ago, before Gateways was Gateways, to the Disability Royal Commission and then now the NDIS, and how that has actually led to either both positives and negatives of providing services to people in need?
Firstly, just to pick up on your point there, Jay, around when you're not directly exposed to disability services, it can be invisible to the wider community. That's a double-edged sword. So I'm really happy when I'm talking with members of the community and they say, what services do you provide? And I say, actually, we've got an accommodation house in Bell Park. And what's the address? And I rattle it off and they say, that's just around the corner from us. I didn't even know it was there. And that actually makes me really happy because it means that people with disabilities have taken their rightful place in the community and they're fitted in and they're fully immersed in the community and they're not really visible in any negative way. So that's a great thing, but it's also a difficult thing when a family needs to navigate the disabilities service sector for the first time, and it can be really overwhelming because it is complex. It's a very large and difficult beast to wrestle to the ground for the first time. And that's where Gateways comes in. We've got the experts that actually help people to navigate that. So in answer to your question around the history of services, the NDIS, National Disability Insurance Scheme, started as a trial in the Barwon region in 2013 and became the full scheme, fully operational scheme a year later. Prior to that, disability services were predominantly state-funded and there was never enough. And it's not a criticism of any particular state government. They have a lot of drawdown on a lot of demands on their resources. And the systems were fragmented and really crisis-driven. And a group of advocates, a group of service providers like Gateways, and people with disabilities themselves got together and lobbied government and said, there's got to be a better way. We need a scheme where mums and dads who are ageing themselves with an older son or daughter with a disability don't lay awake at night wondering what's going to happen to their child, their adult child, when they're no longer able to provide services. And fast forward to today, we've got the National Disability Insurance Scheme. It is a national scheme. The term insurance comes from the social insurance model, like Medicare, that it's there for everybody should they need it. It is determined by a person's needs, whether they qualify for the scheme, but once they're identified as being eligible, then that scheme will be there to support them and their changing needs over the course of their lives for their entire lives. And those mums and dads that I mentioned earlier can then really take solace in the fact that there will be a scheme there to support them. It's not perfect. The media loves a bad news story.
Do they ever?
And there's lots of negative press out there about it. But honestly, it is supporting hundreds of thousands of people that weren't previously able to be supported by a scheme like this. And they, like I mentioned earlier, they're out in the community and they're just getting on with life. And it's really exciting to see.
It's interesting, that point around the media liking a bad news story, and having been involved personally with the NDIS with some of our children's involvement, I've seen firsthand the amazing positives that we've experienced with people and some of the challenges in terms of operational process, which we talked a little bit about off air before we started. I was thinking just then, Jandi, about how challenging that is when sort of bad news sells and you're the sort of marketing and communications manager of a organisation like Gateways. And a little bit like the financial planning industry, I think one of the things that we've done historically poorly is actually give people a little bit of a peek under the hood of what we actually do. So what have been some of the challenges for Gateways and the sector in terms of marketing what you do, the service that you provide, the value that you add? I know there's a lot in that question, but I'll leave it to you to tell me what you think.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've only been in the sector for, not even a year. So I guess I'm still trying to understand how to position the organisation positively and I guess combat some of that negativity that's out in the marketplace. I guess the approach that we're taking is really to celebrate the positive stories and make sure that we're constantly reminding our community about the good things that we're doing, the achievements that we're having, so that when the negative story does come across our desk, there's a lot more positive in there in the mix, and we can, I guess, move on from the negative story quite quickly. I want to reflect on a story that we actually ran in the last couple of weeks, which is about a young man who came across Gateways and For the last 6 months, we've been working with this young gentleman because he'd never had the opportunity to go on a camp before.
So is this Darcy's story?
This is Darcy's story. And so Gateways worked with Darcy and his family to give him the opportunity to go on his first camp. And I actually had the opportunity to sit next to his support worker in some training that I attended a couple of days ago. And I said, tell me about it, tell me about the camp. And he said, oh, look, it was just absolutely amazing. Darcy was so happy. He was just so pleased to be there. He engaged in every activity. And I said, okay, so when's his next camp? And he said, we've already had it. He's already been on the next camp, and it was at the Enchanted Forest on the other side of Melbourne. So quickly he had moved on to his next camp, and basically Darcy's dreams of going on camp have been fulfilled twice within the space of a month. So it's, I guess, getting those good news stories out there to paint that really positive picture of what can be achieved.
Yeah, I think those human stories, and we mentioned just before the podcast started, Rowan, about how the sort of human element of what we do. I mean, the people and the culture aspect of what we do is sometimes put aside, or it's deflected, or maybe it's not given the precedence that is important. I mean, the culture of an organisation like Gateways, I think it's an important thing to be celebrated, not only internally but externally to the community. And again, I'm guilty of having used Gateways for a long time and the services and been an advocate of it, yet still not actually fully being aware of the other services that are provided. On that front, when we're talking about the other services, you mentioned a couple of them, Rowan, but can we maybe highlight some of the other key areas of support that are offered through Gateways?
So, thanks, Jay. So a significant part of the work that we do is providing quality accommodation for people. So we've got, I mentioned that the metaphorical house in Bell Park. We've got a range of houses across from Western Melbourne through the Barwon and all the way down to the Western Districts. And these are typically more or less suburban homes. They are residences for people with disabilities. They are their home, and it's set up in such a way that they can live. Sometimes you hear the expression living an ordinary life to try and convey the fact that they're living an inverted commas normal life, the same as their neighbours and their friends and their family. I prefer to say living great lives,
yeah.
but I guess that's a perspective thing. But they're living the lives that they want to live. That's the most important thing in their own homes, and they're supported to do that. We've got positive behaviour support, which is a program that focuses on people who communicate through their behaviours, often that are challenging for others to interpret or to manage. They can be, in the most extreme cases, risks to themselves or to others. And we've got some really high quality specialist practitioners in that space that help to devise support plans for people that play to their strengths and help to minimise those perhaps less desirable behaviours. Ultimately, it's just communication. It's people that need to be supported to communicate with you in a different way. So they're really skilled at doing that. We've got therapy programs. You mentioned Elfie and his speechy,
Yep.
And the nice shout out to Olivia. We've got OTs and a range of other therapy services as well. We've got, we mentioned Darcy and his camp, recreation and those sorts of activities, camps and trips away. Individualised support. Sometimes people with disabilities say, I don't particularly want to be with anyone else. I just want you to support me the way I want to be supported, and that's fine. We've got lots of opportunities to do that as well. And by the way, going back to the NDIS, that is premised entirely on that principle of choice and control. The individual is at the centre. They have the right to say, yes, I want that service, or no, I don't want that service, or I want you to support me in a particular way, or at a particular time, or even by a particular person, and they can nominate all of that, and we do our absolute best to meet those requests. What have I forgotten, Jandi? Oh, Social Connect. Social Connect
activities.
Yeah, so Social Connect is generally during the day, and generally for people who are looking for a more structured program, not necessarily centre-based. It might still be out in the community, but it will be staff supporting them to, it might be a cooking program or visiting the library, that kind of thing, so that They're in programs that are helping them to develop their skills and develop their learning and their engagement with the community.
Yep. I'm thinking of one of the other services that we've utilised as a family in terms of NDIS plan coordination and support. Again, for any of the family members out there or parents with kids using on the NDIS and using support services, I think it's a minefield. Like the NDIS, the positives are amazing. The operational delivery of some of them still has its challenges. And for families that are challenged with kids with disabilities, and time constraints and also just understanding how the system works. One of the great things that we found with Gateways has been that support with plan management. It's been, to me, it's right up there in terms of it's certainly helping with the parents and the families supporting their kids. That goes a very, very long way. It's a very, very much a valued service.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, and apologies to my colleagues in support coordination
okay.
and plan management that I forgot to mention that very important aspect of the work that we do. Just to break that out, support coordination is where a person works with a participant, is the jargon, a person who has an NDIS package, to work out where they want to spend their money, and it might be with Gateways or it might be with another service, and that's absolutely fine. And plan management is where a participant or their family, whoever's the decision maker, says, we want to be in control of the dollars that are spent, but we don't want to be the ones who are signing invoices and paying staff and that sort of thing. And so plan management is more of a financial role where there are people managing effectively managing the budget for the person.
Yeah. Again, for busy families and for people dealing with challenges with their kids, I think it's a very much a valued support in addition to all the other services that are offered. Just on Darcy's story, I'll make sure that I link to that in the show notes as well. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges, Jandi, that maybe you and I spoke about in terms of recognition in the community, and also when it comes to things like funding. I think one of the things that's probably not understood, and I probably still don't understand, I'm sure a lot of the people that use Gateways don't understand, like, how do you go about getting the funding to do the things that you actually do? What are some of the challenges there? And then that might lead us into a sort of coming back around to sort of the Lego therapy and autism assessments that some of the Burke Britton client contributions are supported with. So over to you, Jandi.
I'm not sure that I can talk too much about funding. It's not an area that I'm fully versed in.
I can
help
with that. Yeah. We talked about the NDIS before, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and it is a nationally administered scheme. Listeners and viewers may have heard or read $43 billion will be the spend, so it's a very substantial scheme. And it might sound strange for me to say that there's never enough. And it's not so much about the size of the spend, but it's about the scale of demand, the scale of need. There are, I think at last count, 5 million people with significant disabilities in Australia. The NDIS supports about 550,000 of those. There's a lot of need outside that $43 billion scheme. And the reality is that there's very little government support beyond the NDIS. Minister Bill Shorten's been known to refer to it as the only oasis in the desert, which is not necessarily a good thing, but it's a statement of fact. So an organisation like Gateways has sufficient funding to meet our immediate or basic needs. So pay our staff, turn on the electric light, run the photocopier. But when we're talking about supporting people to live great lives, it's never enough. And I've used that expression a couple of times. There's always more that you can do. And we always have staff that come to us and say, oh, if I only had, a few more dollars, I'd be able to support this person to, live independently, to use the bathroom independently, or to support them to be able to make their own meals. Or we talked about iPads before, if only that we could buy them an iPad, they could do so much in terms of their enhancing their communication skills. So often it's those additional needs over and above if I can use the expression, the transactional model of the NDIS, which is an hour of service for, 55, 75 or whatever it might be. And that's where gratefully received support of Burke Britton and others comes in. So we're able to use that money to create opportunities for people beyond that basic level. And Jandi, you've been involved with the Lego therapy
Yeah, so it's donations like those that we receive from the fund that you're associated with. That helps us with things like purchasing new buses. So
you mentioned the bus. We talked about that at over coffee. What was the story with the bus?
So the bus was, I guess, a really important part of our recreation program in Western Melbourne. So a recreation program in Western Melbourne enables our participants in that area to be able to actually get out into the community. So that bus plays a really important part in connecting our participants with the local community, going out for their day programs. Also, as Rohan said, we've got some aged people within our community as well, and that gets them out and about to some of their social interactions in the area. And then we've invested
Can I just ask, in the absence of sort of private funding from organisations, a bus, for example, is there there's no government or federal or state government funding that comes to say, hey, we need a new bus, please give us some money? That just doesn't exist.
It does not exist.
Okay. So I think that to me, again, being new to this sector and that funding model being very foreign, I think it's important for people to know that there's, you think, okay, NDIS is $43 billion, like you said, Rohan. Surely there's plenty of funds going around to support everyone in need, but there's all of these other services and support elements that just the funding's not there unless there's fantastic people in the community, whether it be businesses or individuals, and looking at other ways of giving, then the opportunity for that doesn't really exist. Because I think you mentioned maybe off air, Rohan, that the challenge of running a not-for-profit organisation is that you're spinning your wheels most of the time, making sure that all of your operational costs are covered, and working out when you actually get time to invest in other elements is challenging. So the bus was one.
The bus is actually a great metaphor for what I was saying earlier around if you've got a staff member sitting in a room with a number of participants or a participant, and their NDIS is paying for that staff member to be there, and the electric lights turned on and so on. But the bus makes the difference between the basic service, the person's getting a safe service sitting in that room, and being out in the community, and that's when the magic really happens. So and the bus is that metaphorical vehicle to making that the difference between the value add and the basic.
Yeah, and the fact that it's also it's one to many too. That there's a simple thing that seems simple, like a bus, the ability to be able to transport people that multiple people actually benefit from. The Lego therapy and the autism assessments, maybe you want to touch on those, Jandi? I think you're involved in those couple.
Yeah, not necessarily involved. It happened before my time, but I can definitely talk to the fact that the money that came from the Future Generations Fund in 2022 went towards our Lego therapy program and also providing autism assessments. So I guess what I understand of the autism assessment space is that obviously at that point in time there is no NDIS funding, so autism assessments need to be funded by the parents in most instances. And when you're talking about, $2,000, $3,000 for an autism assessment, we can help families that can't otherwise afford to go through that process with the funding that we receive.
That's a good point. Like, if you're not yet on the NDIS and you're wanting an assessment, it's got to be funded somewhere, doesn't it? The money's got to come from somewhere to actually fund that.
There's that famous catch-22 expression where the NDIA, which is the agency that administers the NDIS, they say they don't pay for assessments, they pay for supports. But in order to provide the evidence that you need the supports, you need an assessment.
Yeah,
and so it's often left entirely to the families to find the resources to be able to put those assessments together.
Yeah, Amy would kill me if I didn't quote a couple of the stats from the Future Generation Fund and give a shout out to some of the Burke Britton clients. I think did you mention 2022? Yep, and which was was that the Lego therapy or the autism assessments? Both. Okay, so I think I went back to 2019. There was, I think, $34,000 of contribution in 2019, nearly $4,000 in 21, $9,000 in 22, and about $5,500 this year, 2023. Again, from Burke Britton clients via the Future Generation Fund, which is again a massive shout out to the Burke Britton clients and all the team at the Future Generation program for their contribution towards not only Gateways but a number of fantastic organisations throughout the Geelong region. Any other initiatives or programs that you've got coming up that you think could warrant or benefit from things like external funding that maybe doesn't come via NDIS or government funding?
Yeah, we're going through a process at the moment of actually listing our projects across the organisation so that we can actually go through a prioritisation of what's, I guess, going to provide the most benefit. So collecting that from the executives at the moment who are responsible for the different areas.
Jandi showed me a list of the projects that have been gathered so far, and you read down it, and I actually made this comment to Jandi, I don't know how you decide, because every one of them is a really high quality, high need project, but we just can't do them all. I wonder whether, Jandi, it might be worth spending some time thinking about our or talking about our big event that we've got planned on the 24th of March next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess Rohan and I, being quite new to Gateways, felt that, you know, maybe we could do with a little bit of a re-emergence into the community, and we identified the opportunity to have a community event, and a community event that is for our participants, it's for our staff, it's for their families, it's for people like Burke, Britton, who we have commercial, I guess, relationships with, and it's a real opportunity for us to, I guess, celebrate Gateways and everything that we do within the community and everything that our community does for us. So on the 24th of March next year, we'll be running a community event. I won't say the name just yet because I won't say that we're 100% committed to it.
You heard it here first, folks. Go for it, Jandi.
Gateways Festival of Fun.
Very good.
And it will be held at Gateways in our North Geelong office, and it's just going to be a real opportunity to showcase some of the things that we're doing at Gateways, but also for people to come together and just celebrate and have a bit of fun.
So we're planning this. It's still in the planning phase, so the exact details are not yet known, but the sorts of things we've talked about is taking over the car park, setting up stalls for a number of our participants who make arts and crafts. So I've got some beautiful coloured mushrooms in my garden at home, made out of ceramic and glaze that one of our participants makes, and that there's jewellery and that sort of thing. So the participants will be allowed to have a stall for free and sell their wares, and we will invite other members of the community, the typical kind of community market type stalls, and they can come along for a fee and they can have their stalls, and that'll help offset the cost for the participants to have their stall for free.
It sounds awesome. I know we touched on that briefly. I didn't hear the name, but I know we spoke about that when we caught up for coffee. Thinking about what the future looks like for Gateways, and obviously you've talked about, Jandi, the opportunity to actually sort of have a bit of a rebirth or a reawakening of Gateways and awareness in the community. Along that theme, what are some of the continued challenges that Gateways will face, whether it be from marketing or letting people know what they do, or just operationally and service delivery? What are some of the biggest challenges? Maybe Jandi, I'll start with you, and then Rohan, you can talk from a CEO perspective operationally about what the challenges will be.
I think from a marketing perspective, it's about finding the right mechanisms to actually connect with the communities that we work with, and doing that in obviously a cost-effective way, because we don't have huge marketing budgets like some organisations might have. So we have to be really smart about the way in which we do that. And then I think one of the things for me is, whilst we might be able to generate a whole lot of interest and a whole lot of leads out in the marketplace for our different products and services, it's how we actually can then service those needs within the organisation and make sure that we've got the staff and the services and the supports to be able to do that. So we have to be able to, touching on your comment of operations, we have to be able to operationalise that.
There's no point having everyone coming in, knocking on your door saying we need your services and then not be able to provide the services. That's a nice segue into the operational management of the service that you provide. What are the biggest challenges, Rohan?
I try and avoid referring to organisations like Gateways as businesses, because it can turn people off a little, and it can convey the message that you're not connected with the services, with your purpose, why you're there. But the reality is we are a business. We have to run like a business. A not-for-profit simply means that you don't distribute surpluses to owners, to shareholders, and it has to be reinvested in the business. Every other aspect of what we do, we need to be, a lean, mean fighting machine when it comes to our operational services. The operation, I beg your pardon, the back office type services that we provide to our organisation. So that means that every challenge that every SME is facing in terms of embracing tech to do things smarter and faster and more efficiently and doing it cheaper, making sure that we don't have waste. I constantly challenge my team, my broader back office team, to say, I want you to think about is at any moment of the day, is what you're doing ultimately to the benefit of the people we support? Does it contribute to our purpose? And if the answer is no, then I want you to ask yourself, why are you doing it? Because ultimately it represents waste if we're doing things that don't add to the greater good, so to speak. And they're the sorts of challenges that we've got. We've got to make sure that, a little bit like the AFL umpire, the old adage that the best umpiring on a day, you don't remember seeing the umpire at all. And that's what we need to be. We need to be really efficient, really smoothly run. A slick operation behind the scenes so that our staff that are there, the reason why we're there to create great outcomes for the people that we support, are freed up to just get on and do that and don't have to worry about, kind of the back office things. It just takes care of itself.
Yeah, that you said the reason why, and I think any business, and I know we're reluctant to use that in the not-for-profit space, but the reality is that having a why, a vision and a mission that is understood and communicated throughout, which is the culture. I think we talked about that off air before we hit record, about the importance of actually embedding the culture of what our vision and our mission is, whatever we do, so that it flows through our people, the processes, our clients, and then even though we're not distributing to owners or shareholders, the financials, making sure that we actually have an operation that it can stand on its own 2 feet independently financially.
I love the story from NASA from years ago. It might be apocryphal, but it just communicates the message beautifully, where the President of the United States was touring the NASA facilities in Florida, and a janitor walked past and he said, "What do you do?" And the janitor said, "I'm putting a man on the moon." Yeah. He was engaged with the program, and that's what we're all here for. We're here to put a man on the moon.
Yeah, he makes a contribution that ultimately puts a man on the moon.
That's it.
And people knowing that they actually do contribute in their small part, big part to an organisation. Again, the challenges of being a CEO in any organisation, I think you've got your work ahead of you, because it's in any not-for-profit or business, there's always challenges. There's challenges just in dealing with human nature and whatever industry you're involved in. I want to kind of close out by giving you an opportunity, I suppose, to have a call to action to anyone that's actually listening to this, whether it be a parent who's got a child that maybe could benefit from services, whether it be another corporate partner potentially that's looking to make a contribution and get involved in the community. What would you say to any of our listeners out there, wherever they come from, about Gateways and how they can get involved and support?
Thanks, Jay. Look, we really want to be there for our community. We want to be part of the community, and we'd like people to think about the best way that we can connect with them. So you mentioned a whole range of I guess, potential connections there. If there's a person, a parent typically, or someone else who's responsible for a young one, and they're worried about their ability to fit in at school, or the way that they're conducting themselves in different ways, it doesn't hurt to talk with someone and to think about what supports might be out there to be able to make a difference. And like we've touched on, and thank you for sharing Elfie's story. That's a beautiful story. But the difference that can make in a child's life, and often in the parents' lives as well, just to know that there are supports there, and we can be there for people. It ultimately doesn't always translate to a financial arrangement. We see ourselves as community members, and in the same way that a neighbour will help out another neighbour, we've got experts that if they take a phone call, they'll do absolutely everything they can to point a family member in the right direction, even if it's not an opportunity for Gateways to provide those services. We want a good outcome for people with disabilities. That's our purpose, and it doesn't really matter whether we're the ones providing the services or not. With the corporate end of the spectrum, corporate partners, there's a whole range of ways that we can engage with corporate. So we mentioned our event that we've got coming up in March next year. We'd be looking for a major naming sponsor for the event, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that. It might be that there's everything from the portable toilets to staging to the little marquees that you put, the 3x3 marquees that you put over every store, the hire companies. There's a whole range of opportunities where corporate partners might be able to say to us, look, we've got some capacity in our system. It won't cost us much to drop off a half a dozen toilets to you and pick them up there on the Monday morning. And that would be an enormous help to us to not have to then find the dollars to hire those toilets. And like I said earlier, that's then money that's available to spend on our purpose and our mission and creating great outcomes for the people that we support.
Jandi, anything that Rohan hasn't touched on in terms of how people can get involved, maybe even where people can find more about Gateways, whether it be on the interwebs or social media? Where can we get some more information other than in the show notes where I'll add Darcy's story?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, obviously through our website and through our socials, you can follow us and keep up to date with what we're doing. But I guess just to reinforce what Rohan said, we're always looking for people to join our community, and we love building our Gateways community. So if there's anyone that resonates with what we do, just pick up the phone. Happy to have a chat, and love to work out how we can connect people in with our community.
Great. I'll put website, Instagram, all of that in the show notes. Did I cut you off there, Rohan? Were you about to mention something?
I was just going to build on something that Jandi just said, and it's an expression that I really like, and perhaps it might be a almost good spot to leave it. We're as much interested in friend raising as we are fundraising, because if we can bring people into our community, it effectively opens opportunities for people with disabilities in probably ways that we haven't even dreamt of yet. And the number of connections that I've made over the years sitting next to somebody at dinner that's led to employment of a person with a disability or whatever the example might be. So it's not necessarily about asking people to put their hand in their pocket and parting with their hard-earned, although that would be nice as well. But there may be more kind of lateral thinking opportunities that we can find by friend raising. Yeah,
I think that is a nice way to leave it. I mean, the idea of relationships, this is back full circle to what we talk about in nearly every one of these podcasts, is the importance of relationships and the importance of that in the Geelong community. So listen, Rohan, Jandi, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. To Gateways and the support services from a personal point of view that you've provided to myself and my family over the last decade, we're greatly appreciative. Forward to having you guys on for a round 2 episode at some point in the near future, and we can talk about the event in March and some of the other updates in the new year. So again, Rohan and Jandi, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to, don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.